There is a city that sits on the shores of a great lake. Not too far from the tall buildings, on its tree-lined streets, live little Joshua, Jaja, and Josiah.
You want to read a book with me?
This is Joshua.
I gotta be careful.
Yeah, sure, with all that
I gotta
stuff.
be careful.
Yeah, okay.
I gotta clean this up when I make a math.
Joshua's 4. He lives with his mom and dad.
Check it out. Here comes Anthony. This says Anthony is cool.
Yeah.
Anyone who meets Joshua would see a happy boy, and he is. But he's got something inside of him that shouldn't be there,
And then Anthony has a
and it will probably change his life forever.
Is strong. So Anthony builds something.
He built a house.
Look at that. A what? A house?
Yeah.
How did you know? That's the next line. Anthony builds a house.
Yeah.
Thousands of other kids are just like him.
What do you think happened here?
These are their stories. At least 500,000 children in the United States have been poisoned by lead. It could have been prevented, and kids are still poisoned every day. Lead in household paint, once marketed as durable and safe, became recognized as toxic, especially to children. It was banned in 1978, but lead paint still exists in tens of millions of older U.S. homes. Once it starts to flake, the paint chips and dust can put lead into the air, soil, and our bodies.
This is the yellow house?
Yes, that's the yellow house.
This house poisoned Joshua almost 3 years ago. When Joshua's family rented the home, they had no warning.
And it says that lead hazards were found, contributing in whole or part to a child's poisoning. And then it just kind of lists all over the house: windows, walls, foundation, shed walls, the porch, the deck.
Lead is invisible. But even though they couldn't see the metal in their home, Joe and Ebony knew their son was changing in front of them.
We kind of brushed down the rug a little bit until he started biting, kicking, punching. He would hurt us. How do you cut yourself? Well, did you use soap? Go back. Go use soap.
He's back to normal kid stuff now, but it's unclear what kind of effect the lead will have on him in the future. His lead levels were so high back then that he had to be hospitalized.
They had him in like this crib that looked like quarantine. Wow. It was a cage. It was like a baby jail, if you ask me. And he would shake it all the time. He would shake it and scream. So we couldn't bring him home until we found a place.
Children are the most susceptible to lead. Their bodies absorb higher rates of the metal than adults. Joe and Ebony were told there was no way they could take their son back to the same home.
They said if we did not find a place within that week, they was going to put him in foster care.
The city?
The city was going to take our baby and put him in foster care until we found a place. So we didn't sleep. He took off a week of work, but I was still going to work. We was hunting day and night, even in the dark. He's emotional, I'm emotional. Our baby's in the hospital, and we don't have a place to live now, basically homeless for a week.
Like so many families, they learned about lead too late. It's now something Joshua will always have to live with.
You have parents that don't have an idea about lead poisoning. Right. And, you know, they move in these neighborhoods where they can afford their budgets, you know, and they're not thinking about their kids' health. They're thinking about just having a roof over their head. And the sad part about it is the kids pay for it. You okay? Are you okay?
Yes, ma'am.
When lead was found in the water in the U.S. city of Flint, Michigan, there was outrage from the public as well as federal officials. But at the time, according to some estimates, Cleveland had almost 3 times the amount of lead-poisoned kids. A child who is lead-poisoned has elevated lead levels in their blood, a measurement set by U.S. health officials. The main source of poisoning in the U.S. actually comes from household paint. But what's dangerous about lead is that you can't actually see it on a child's face. It's affecting something much deeper and over a long period of time.
At birth, a child's blood level is largely dependent upon the moms.
Bruce Lanphier is an epidemiologist and says there is significant evidence showing irreversible brain damage in lead-poisoned children.
It's kind of like their bodies are starved for iron and calcium, and lead mimics those when it gets absorbed. What we saw is blood lead levels increased, the amount of gray matter in the prefrontal cortex was diminished. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain that makes us most distinctly human. It distinguishes us from other animals. This is also where executive function operates, impulse control, long-term planning. And so
this can lead to lower IQs, behavioral problems like ADHD, and lifelong health problems. Lead also has links to aggressive behavior later in life. Bruce says studies now strongly suggest that lead could be a major risk factor in violence.
You can see lead being introduced in paint and then gasoline, and you look at how that exposure occurs over this century, and then you lag the epidemic of homicides, and you see this striking correlation. Young children were most heavily exposed, but then you had the 15 to 25-year-old being involved in violent crimes.
The effects of lead exposure overall are more likely to occur in children with elevated lead levels in their blood. But even lower levels in kids have been shown to cause harm.
What percentage of American kids have lead in their system?
100%.
Policymakers in the U.S. knew decades ago that lead had damaging and long-lasting effects on a child's health. Lead levels have gone down since then, but cities like Cleveland continue to see hundreds of kids poisoned every year. In the past 5 years, at least 10,000 children have been poisoned in Cleveland. Almost 90% of Cleveland homes are potential lead hazards. And many families we met, especially those that are lower income, are trapped in homes that have known lead dangers. Hey, good morning.
Hi, y'all. Good morning.
Good, how are you?
Y'all watch y'all step, because I'm trying to leave this on here till I paint. No, get back. You go now.
Josiah is almost 2 years old. He's not yet been tested for lead. His grandmother, Mary, knows there is lead in the house, but she can't do anything about it.
They said they was going to do all the windows in here, lead, and they said they was going to do the doors too, you know, and vinyl siding. They was going to go ahead and just tear that back porch down.
Mary told us the city was supposed to fix the lead in her home several years ago with federal money. But Cleveland ran out of that money and was unable to secure more in the following years because of mismanagement.
Oh, that room had lead too, the windowsill.
She says she hasn't been able to get any help or response from the city since then.
Yes, so we got lead. So,
Does JoJo normally stay here, or do you just take care of him sometimes?
you know, he's staying here.
And have you had him tested for lead?
I don't know if he was tested for lead. I got to ask his mom.
Mary already has 2 grandchildren who are lead poisoned.
Whew, it is no joke.
Now she fears Josiah will be the 3rd, but she has nowhere else to take him.
Say the city came, tested, and said, "Oh, you got lead in the baby, can't be here." Would you move? Do you have that? I mean, that'd be a lot to ask, right?
Where am I moving to? I can't afford to move.
There just wouldn't be an option.
No, it would not be an option.
Mary was told the lead repairs would cost over $20,000. While the city repeatedly says they have no money due to federal funding cuts, many in the public, like Mary, feel that the city has found money for other priorities. Places like downtown Cleveland have been getting a makeover, including $50 million put towards a new public square.
It's like they putting all that money down there, building up down there, doing stuff, them parks or whatever they fixing up or building down there. Do these houses. You know what I'm saying? I'm right here, right here. You finna go to school.
Some of the city's federal funding came back last year. Mary will have to reapply, which involves a long process of gathering paperwork. In the meantime, she has to do what she can to keep Josiah from getting lead into his system. But the odds are stacked against him. Nationally, black children are 3 times more likely to have elevated lead levels in their blood than white children. According to a local investigation, in this region, the highest rates of lead poisoning are in majority black neighborhoods.
And this is only accounted January to September of 2015.
Kim Foreman is director of the local nonprofit Environmental Health Watch. She's showing us the numbers of lead-poisoned children in one of the city's worst-hit neighborhoods. It's majority African-American.
So just in that time, less than a year, you had almost 24 here, 18 here, 13 here, 14 here. That's pretty incredible.
Every day there's children get poisoned every day.
So why is it that the African-American community seem to be getting this disproportionately compared to the rest of the city?
It's like that with all different health conditions. You could look at infant mortality, lead, you could look at poverty rates, you could look at housing, substandard housing. So
She pointed out that these communities have a long history of housing discrimination and disinvestment, which ties directly to poor health in these areas.
they can't leave, they're not mobile, or they're not financially able to up and leave. But then the question is, should folks in particular neighborhoods have to leave?
Right.
She says federal money can only fix about 300 homes, while tens of thousands of units in Cleveland may have lead. Kim argues more resources need to be put toward lead prevention.
If we don't get the HUD dollars, what do we do? And so we are really looking at prevention, and not just chasing sick children around, trying to get them tested, because families move from house to house.
What you eat? Taste buds. Oh, that taste, yeah.
Kim and her co-worker, AKBAR Taylor, are trying to catch lead in houses before it poisons children.
Inspections. Oh, you doing inspections? Yeah, I'm headed out, man. I'll talk to you, Roy. So we may have to canvass some more.
Right, so I'm gonna do the landlord focus group.
For various reasons, many renters and landlords may ignore lead, don't have enough money to fix it, or simply don't know about it.
Right here. 3. And this lady's been in this house for 17 years. So I said, let me get on over here. How you been? All right. So you know, just trying to just do the walkthrough, the normal walkthrough, see what's going on. What I did want to do is test this paint, just to give it a quick test to see if it's lead. I brought some sticks today.
If they find lead, they can notify the city to take the house under its federally funded program.
Yeah, there's a lot of peeling.
This is a classic example of how you would get lead from the outside to the inside.
Well, we track it in, you know, so all this is flaking, and it's fine dust all over the place. So when we walk it through the house, it's just everywhere, contaminating the house, usually on the floors and horizontal surfaces, and, you know, the kids are on those surfaces.
Yeah.
Hand-to-mouth activity, so they get a high dose of lead. So it's everywhere, it's flaking paint. So
What percentage of the houses that you go out to have lead in them?
90%.
90?
Yeah. It may be a hazard, or it may just be a potential hazard because the paint's intact.
The owner of this house has several grandchildren that live on and off in the home. The family says one of their older kids has already been exposed to lead in another home.
So the window seals are definitely a problem. I think I found lead paint on all window seals. So this is just a hot spot where kids always get poisoned.
Yeah.
So they toys, hand to mouth. I'm gonna test the brown in here. So I'm gonna break these.
AKBAR took out one of the home lead tests to check.
Take them up. All right. See if it's lead or not. Uh-oh. Yeah, that turned red as soon as it hit that surface. Yeah, so that's definitely lead. So when we get one like that, if the paint looks the same, we just assume they're all lead, and we mark them as positive.
The team will still have to do a professional lead test, but he's pretty confident it'll test positive. Even though this is a step in the right direction, AKBAR and Kim can only address a fraction of the homes. It still leaves a huge swath of families without help. Federal dollars for lead poisoning prevention across the country have been severely cut in the last several years. Cleveland, which relied almost exclusively on that money, has had little else in place to prevent poisoning. The city requires no lead testing before home sales, and it doesn't offer any public record of lead-safe homes. In late 2015, as the Flint water crisis was unfolding, 2 local reporters in Cleveland published a series on the history of failures at the city level.
Thanks for coming out. So that house.
Not harming anybody anymore, is it?
No.
Rachel DeSille and Bree Zeltner of the city's newspaper, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, spent months combing through public records from the city. What they found was that over 50% of lead poisoning cases that came to the city were never investigated, something they're required to do under state law.
Its basic responsibility was to respond to these cases, do an investigation, and follow the law to make sure that the owner of the home complied with the law, which was to get rid of the lead hazard or take them to court so that nobody else could live there. And that was not being done.
This meant that homes have been left to poison multiple children over the last decade, including the one we were standing near.
Some of the houses that we went to were still occupied. They still had people living in them. Sometimes they had children living in them.
A local study found that only about 20% of children who were at risk of lead poisoning in Cleveland and the surrounding county were tested. So the actual numbers of lead-poisoned children could be much higher.
What does that mean? It means that these are kids who are not going to do well in school, who may drop out of school, who may end up committing crimes, who then may end up going to prison.
Months after the series was published, the city still faced about 3,000 backlog cases with minimal staff.
So they're only responding to those kids who are the worst of the worst cases, the kids who are in the hospital, the homes where there are multiple kids who've been poisoned. And still they don't have enough people to respond to that.
Their investigation detailed potential solutions and pointed out the millions that could be saved in healthcare and education costs. But the refrain from City Hall has been that money is tight.
Show me your budget and I'll show you your priorities. If it had been a priority, money would have been found somewhere, right? I mean, we made a list, a detailed list of projects that have been done with city money, with county money, with philanthropic and corporate partners. The money was found for those things.
Where's the outrage from the people that we see in Flint? Why don't they have that here in Cleveland?
When you're holding a glass of water in Flint and you can see that it's an odd color, it smells bad.
Yeah.
This just shouts, we need to pay attention to it. Lead in Cleveland and in most other cities it's invisible. The problem is invisible and it always has been.
I think one of our biggest struggles in reporting this was not getting people just to go, oh, that's still a problem, and then moving on. A lot of people would just say, who cares about these kids? These are poor kids, they live in poor neighborhoods, they were going to do badly anyways. We really had to show people how they had some kind of responsibility for this and that it was something that was actually preventable.
When the Plain Dealer series came out, the city contested the numbers. Then Mayor Frank Jackson cited incompetence by the city's public health director and put in an interim director. At a city council hearing 6 months later, progress still seemed slow.
We're in the process of hiring 3 full-time public health lead investigators.
The backlog still stood at about 3,000 cases. Meanwhile, it seemed new cases were coming in without a clear idea of how many or how those were being handled.
Do we know what the number is in terms of referrals from January through to date for 2016?
To the councilman, I did not bring that information today.
While things are now being hashed out, at least on the surface, for the last 10 years, the mayor's office has failed to get ahead of the problem. Mayor Jackson has not given an interview to the Plain Dealer about lead and has largely been silent on the issue. The mayor's office hosted a press conference in May that focused on the city hosting the Republican National Convention. We showed up because his office refused to give us an interview.
Mayor Jackson, as the spotlight is focused on Cleveland nationally and internationally during this event, any reporters coming here would see that 400 kids a year are being poisoned by lead that's causing irreversible brain damage. I haven't heard you say anything publicly about it. Why is this not an emergency or a crisis here?
Well, you won't hear me say anything about it today either. I'm focused on this. And it is a crisis not only in Cleveland, it's across this country.
You've been in office over 10 years, 400 kids a year getting poisoned. You don't seem like you're in emergency mode here.
Well, that's your opinion.
Since this press conference, City Hall has hired a full-time health director and at least 2 new staff investigators. But it remains to be seen what changes will happen.
So what's the biggest hook that you can tell a group of policymakers sitting in a room?
We have everything we need to act. Now, we can take some comfort in the fact that, again, the blood levels have come down, but that also gives us the opportunity to say, and now we can finish it off. Now we can completely eliminate it. And we haven't been willing to do that. If the voices of the families in Flint are magnified from Cleveland and other cities, that might be enough.
This is now Joshua's home. His lead levels aren't as high anymore, but he still doesn't know if it can hurt him in the future. This is Joshua's friend, Jaja. She was also poisoned by lead.
Somebody can find it.
Her and Joshua, I call them the low lead buddies. They both are aware that they have lead. They play together accordingly. I just think it's a great thing.
Is it just this wild coincidence that she happens to be lead poisoned too, or is it just like, nope?
This is just a big problem here.
It's just that common.
Would we call it an epidemic?
The yellow house.
The house where Joshua got poisoned has new kids living there, and the city has not confirmed that the lead is gone. A test confirmed that Josiah has lead inside of him. Mary is in the process of applying to the city for help.
What do you think is at stake here?
The future? That's just point blank.
Be careful, don't waste the water. We gotta take turns.
What's at stake is the future of our city, really. I mean, if you think about it, it's the developing brains of our children. It's wasted potential.
Sad part is when those kids are the ones that are having trouble in school and getting in trouble, we're all right there to blame them. Like it's their fault that that happened. But when they were infants or 2 or 3 and getting this poisoning, we weren't there for them. So the blame is theirs always, and it's never ours to share.
This lead epidemic has been talked about for decades, but it could go away. It could go away if the people in power paid attention to the stories of Joshua, Jaja, Josiah, and the thousands of other children like them in the country.
These are people. These are not just statistics. These are people with lives, and they're trying to live the best life they can. And so why won't we do our part to make sure that that happens?
All right, buddy.